It was the day I almost walked away. Not just from them, but from everything. A single, sharp sentence, thrown like a dagger, echoed in the silent battlefield of our living room. "You never listen," I screamed, my voice cracking, tears blurring the only path I saw, the one straight out the door. But it wasn't just about that argument. It was about years of feeling invisible, like my words were just background noise in a world too busy to notice. The knot in my stomach tightened, a familiar ache of being unheard, misunderstood. In that moment, I truly believed it was all over, that some things could never be fixed. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, a suffocating weight I could no longer bear. Growing up, my voice often felt like a whisper in a storm. I remember clinging to my father's leg, bursting with news about my first lost tooth, only to have him nod absently, eyes glued to the newspaper. It wasn't malice, just preoccupation. Every exciting tale, every budding fear, was met with a quick aha, or a well-meaning but detached piece of advice. I longed for someone to truly lean in, to feel the weight of my words, not just hear their sound. That constant feeling of being talked over or solved, instead of genuinely heard, slowly built a silent wall around my heart, brick by invisible brick. Years later, that wall became a fortress. I remember the night I tried to explain my decision to leave my stable job, chasing an artistic dream. I was terrified, vulnerable. All I needed was for him to see my fear, acknowledge the courage it took. Instead, he launched into a lecture on financial security, practical choices, the real world. His words were a torrent, drowning out my quiet plea for understanding. I watched his mouth move, but heard nothing, just the familiar thud of another brick settling into place. It wasn't just my career he dismissed. It felt like he dismissed me. And then came that night, the culmination of 1,000 small dismissals, 1,000 unheard whispers. We argued about something trivial, but it quickly became a battle for my very existence. The dam broke. "You never listen," I roared, the words tearing from my throat, raw and uncontrolled. The silence that followed was deafening, heavier than any shout. I saw the shock on his face, quickly morphing into hurt, then a defensive anger. My heart instantly twisted with regret, but the words were out, sharp and irreversible. In that moment, I felt the chasm between us widen into an unbridgeable canyon. I fled. The screech of tires on asphalt was my only companion as I sped away, leaving the wreckage of our argument behind. The city lights blurred through my tear-filled eyes, each one a distant, indifferent star. My mind replayed the venom of my words, the hurt in his eyes. Was I wrong? Was I just as stubborn? The questions gnawed at me, but the pain was too fresh, the anger too potent, to turn back. The world outside felt vast and empty, mirroring the hollow ache in my chest. The silence in the car was deafening, filled only with the deafening echoes of my own despair. Hours later, I pulled over, seeking refuge in the quiet solitude of a desolate park. Exhaustion washed over me, heavy and cold. As I stared out at the dark, still lake, a memory surfaced, unbidden. It was him years ago, in his workshop, meticulously sanding a piece of wood, lost in the quiet concentration of creation. No distractions, just focused presence. I'd always seen it as him being distant, but now, a different thought flickered. Was that his way of listening to the wood, to the task? A tiny crack appeared in my resentment, a fleeting question. What if I had never truly listened to his silence either? Later that night, my phone buzzed. His name flashed on the screen. My heart pounded, bracing for more conflict, or perhaps a forced apology. I answered, my voice brittle. "Hello." There was a pause, a long, heavy pause. Then, his voice, softer than I'd ever heard it. "I just called to make sure you're okay." No accusations, no advice, no attempt to fix anything. Just those simple words. It wasn't what I expected. It was a listening without words, a presence without demands. The shock of it hit me like a physical wave. A single tear escaped, hot on my cheek, not of sadness, but of a profound, quiet relief. I hung up, the phone feeling lighter in my hand. The silence in my apartment was no longer empty or suffocating. It hummed with a fragile new understanding. In his few, deliberate words, and the space he allowed between them, I finally heard what I had been craving: acknowledgement. It wasn't about agreeing or fixing, but simply being there. I realized then that I too had been so focused on speaking, on being heard, that I had forgotten the quiet language of empathy. Silence, I discovered, isn't always a void. Sometimes, it's the bridge back, a profound space for connection, where true healing can begin. And in that silence, I truly understood. All those years, I'd been screaming to be heard, but perhaps I hadn't been listening either. Not to the unspoken worries, the quiet burdens my father carried, the ways he did try to connect, however imperfectly. It wasn't about the words exchanged, but the space we created for each other, the willingness to simply exist without judgment. Silence, I discovered, isn't always empty. Sometimes, it's the loudest affirmation, the truest form of empathy, and the most powerful bridge back to connection. It's in the quiet spaces that we finally hear what truly matters.